Hello everyone, and welcome to coverage of Grand Prix Valencia. We have Scribble versus Kayiu today. Scribble is on a Mardu control deck built around Ignition Engine, one of the new cards from AVX, whereas Kayiu is playing Blue-Green Ramp. So Kayiu is on kind of one of the boogeyman decks of this GP, and I'm very interested to see how this matchup will play out. Scribble is on the play, which is really good given Scribble's deck is really heavily built around discard, which tends to be much better on the play than on the draw. So Scribble has already mulliganed to 6, and I think this hand's fine. I'd probably put back the Flames Approach because you don't have any red mana yet, but it is a little bit painful. You have some ways to recuperate life loss. Mirrorgate is a painless land once you get going, but I think Scribble's hand is good enough, certainly. Kayiu, on the other hand, Kayiu's hand can cast a turn 3 RFE. It can cast it goes Crumbling Shrine, Wayfarer's Shrine, Ramsey. I guess it's a little bit awkward that you don't have green, green, green on curve for Petal Scatterer, but you can just do RFE instead. And it's also viable to, instead of doing Wayfarers for Island, to give up the RFEs in favor of going Ramsey into Petal Scatterer. Or I guess just Crumbling Shrine into Wayfarers. So there's a lot of different ways Kayiu can play this hand. I'll be very excited to see which ends up occurring. Although, presumably, Valdez is going to mix this up a little bit. Going low is generally correct versus this ramp deck, I think. This successfully cuts the Ramsey out from under Kayiu. Mysterious Cataracts is a really nice pickup. I think for Kayiu, you're just going to do Crumbling Shrines into Crumbling Shrines. Crumbling Shrine is from a cycle of Explorer lands, and I think they're like one of the more powerful lands in the format, but it's pretty rare that decks get to use them. Lands that potentially A, are creatures, and B, can generate card advantage are kind of cracked. Scribble, on the other hand, a Monument of Queens is not a bad pickup here. Mirrorgate to hit the Crumbling Shrine isn't going to be like game winning by any means, but like you would rather not be potentially dying to a creature. So definitely seems a little bit nice. Technically, you also have access to hitting Lumbering Hillock if you're more worried about the 4/4 than the 3/3s, but I think stopping the land that potentially draws cards is smarter. Yeah, Scribble, I think just checking to see if there was anything else that should be named. And setting up the Embodied Soul is nice, because next turn we'll probably see Lay Ambitions Bear or Dark Bargain, and just kind of starting to build up momentum on that Embodied Soul. So Kayiu is going to be under pressure in the very near future. That's one of the strengths of Scribble's deck, I think, is that it can provide potentially a lot of life total pressure if it gets its early game lined up correctly. It is a control deck, but it is a control deck with pressure. Interesting for Kayiu to fetch up a Lumbering Hillock here. I guess since Crumbling Shrine is off, you need some green source. And Cursive Inroad. Okay, never mind. This play makes entire sense. So Cursive Encroaching Water means that Scribble playing this Monument of Queens will get Kayiu another land drop, presumably the Crumbling Shrine. But I think you're in kind of a fine spot in Scribble's shoes, because you don't have that many lands left, and the deck isn't super mana hungry, so you're okay to just operate on relatively few lands. Missed on potentially drawing a land that produced white or black, which I assume was what we were aiming for. We are now up to 3 Lay Ambitions Bear, or Lay Bear Ambitions, without the proper mana to cast them, other than by tapping these two. Can't do anything with Embodied Soul right now. I can't tell. Is Lay Bear Ambitions, is it a pun? Does that show a bear in the art? Because Panjiao is a set with animals, so I am very curious. A Wayfarer Shrine for Island, presumably, into RFE. Try to start building up some momentum there. You can't RFE into another RFE this turn. A little bit interesting to be... Oh, I think Kayiu had the same realization, yeah. These Crumbling Shrines are blue-green lands right now, so they are better than the Lumbering Hillock. Oh, man. This is brutal. Because Kayiu has these RFEs in hand, and getting to cast one before Scribble got the chance to Lay Bare Ambitions is, very much a difference maker here. I wonder, since Scribble knew that Kayiu had RFE, I wonder if it was correct to just, not try to spike off the Dark Bargain. I probably would have done the same thing in Scribble's shoes, though, so a lot of that is just kind of the benefit of hindsight. And we are enchanting the basic forest with this land aura, so there's no risk of it potentially like getting somehow answered. Drawing this Wayfarer Shrine is really nice. This gives Scribble another potential white or black source, depending on which one Scribble wants more, and it gives Scribble access to another painless source, also moving one step closer to this Arctic Mine, no longer hurting Scribble. I assume we're just going to start seeing Lay-Bear Ambitions going down the road. Taking Petal Scatter is super nice here. So is juicing up this Embodied Soul. I don't know, Scribble is starting to like get to a pretty good game state here. Obviously, one of the things that's scary about the ramp deck is just how resilient it is and how good it is at grinding out in the late game. But the fact that these RFEs are like not going to draw cards when you cast them is kind of huge. But also, you need to just work your way through that. Yeah, Lay Ambitions Bear. Or Lay Bear Ambitions. I keep getting that backwards. And Kayiu, if Kayiu had sacrificed the Land Aura, okay, realizes it. Sacrifice Land Aura, you can still potentially get your RFE or In Dire Straits going. I don't think it matters which one, honestly. I think they're both kind of interchangeable here. So you do get to gas up a little bit. You have 3 land drops to make. 2 or 3 land drops. Yeah, 3 land drops. So if you draw, oh my god, drawing another RFE. It's awkward because on the one hand, that's great. You have a really dominant late game. On the other hand, Scribble just has all of these late bear ambitions, which are just denying the card draw, and Kayiu has to work through them, which is just incredibly awkward. Kayiu also being at 5 mana rather than at 7 means that these RFEs are still just a little bit away. But I definitely think if you're Scribble, you need to start like putting your foot on the gas like right now. Drawing another basic land is huge. Mountain's a great draw here. So you can do that, you can fetch, and then you have the mana to potentially both Shanjin's Command. Oh my god, Shanjin's Command to hit all of the RFEs is so good. Oh wow, I forgot that Scribble's deck had main deck Gravehade like that. So yeah, you get the land going. You get Embodied Soul up to 4 counters on it, because presumably you use Shanjin's Command to tutor up a 1 mana spell of some sort. Okay, we're instead going to see the Lay Bear Ambitions train continue going. Which I think is kind of interesting. I don't have a strong opinion. In this case, it's being rewarded because Kayiu has even more Gravecast cards. But a lot of what I've said about like, you need to close out the game because Kayiu's deck, even if you're hitting it with all this hand attack, just like has a dominant late game from these RFEs coalescing. That does change substantially if Scribble properly nukes Kayiu's graveyard. Interesting that Scribble did not give the Embodied Soul flying yet. I wonder if there's any consideration there to, like, if I was Kayiu, I think you want to block with Ramsey because, you're just looking to play another one, or you can just play another one. And gaining 3 life is good, especially because once that thing has flying, you're never going to gain that life again. If you're Kayiu, do you just In Dire Straits to continue to work your way through these Lay Bear Ambitions? It looks like it. So both of those Lay Bear Ambitions got 2-for-1s, which is huge. So, Scribble is up many cards, and the second Scribble casts this Shanjin's Command to nuke the graveyard, Scribble just, goes Super Saiyan. Looks like we're in the tank. We're going with Dark Bargain. Is this just a greed move? Is this just I hope to draw a land? I mean, if it is, it worked. But I don't love that, because then you either need to take a turn off of Nebula, you need to take a turn off of beating them down with Embodied Soul, or you need to give them a window to potentially draw their 7th land and make it so you're now dealing with a problem that you didn't have to deal with. But Scribble is in a fine situation here as long as we see this Shanjin's Command cast. I will kind of go insane if this Shanjin's Command isn't cast, and especially go insane if it isn't cast and isn't punished. I guess I don't know Scribble's deck, so I don't know what the best 1-drops to tutor up are, but it's possible we're about to find out. Yeah, okay, so thankfully does cast the Shanjin's Command. Let's see. Scribble's deck, Out of Body, Scorch. I would probably do Scorch here. Yeah, okay. Yeah, Kayiu does just concede the game there. We didn't see that moment directly on camera, but I agree with Kayiu's decision. So, losing game 1 is a little bit rough, but I'm curious to see how the rest of this plays out. Scribble, I'm not sure what Scribble really wants here. I probably want Prying Inquiry and 12,000 Eyes, but I don't know if you want the sweepers in the form of Face the Dawn. You don't have reliable access to them, and I think in most cases where Kayiu produces the like go wide board state, you're kind of toast. So maybe you just don't play around that. But I think I probably want to cut the Metal Munches. So there are plenty of cuts in Scribbl's deck, so finding the ins will be an interesting question. On Kayiu's side of things, you want the Helene's Bound by Might. I think that card is quite good versus control. Relic Coercion is maybe you board in the Stand Unassailable or Forbidden Treasures. Actually, you definitely board in the Stand Unassailable. I think just density of threats is good, especially versus the deck trying to grind you out. I probably don't board in the Forbidden Treasures. I think that's just kind of boarding in to board in. And the thing to remember about this blue-green ramp deck is it has an incredibly powerful proactive plan. So it just needs to be able to stick to that plan, and any card you dilute it with, you need to be able to justify. So, off the cuff, I think Stand might be better than Sack Ball, but I'm not certain about that statement. So maybe Kayiu just click submit. Alright, so we're mulliganing. We see 2 Sack Balls in hand, so that's either both of the Sack Balls in Kayiu's deck or boarded more in. We have turn 1 Primal Resurgence into turn 2 Wayfarer Shrine to untap the Primal Resurgence to also cast In Dire Straits, which is insane. That's this is one of the deck's nut draws. Scribble had to mulligan to 6 and bottom the Ignition Engine that the deck is built around, but has the ability to do Valdez things. And one nice thing about these Sack Balls is the fact that they're on the same mana value as Wayfarer's Lantern means they can insulate it from hand attack. If Scribble goes high to hit the In Dire Straits, that's awkward because you don't have a payoff after that, but Scribble's hand right now doesn't really have board interaction, so once you get the Sack Ball in play, you can just start pressuring Scribble's life total. Alright, Kayiu, Scribble didn't say high or low yet, unless that's just a glitch. Oof, yeah, this is brutal. Yeah, so this is unfortunately one of the worst situations because revealing might have changed Scribble's choice, and now you go from being in a fine spot to being in a bad spot. So a little bit of haste there, but I've been there plenty of times before. I get it, Kayiu. We're gonna see a chain of Wayfarer's Lanterns here, though. This is an insane amount of mana under Kayiu, and there's plenty of things to eat up in the graveyard, so these Sack Balls are going to be able to go beast mode pretty quickly. I'd probably shock in the New Divide, just so you have open the green mana. Kayiu agrees. Or I guess you can fetch blue mana off it. But also, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 mana already. In Dire Straits, if you sack a Wayfarer's Lantern, costs 10. So, yeah, it doesn't matter whether you name high or low off the Valdez. So Chronicle of the Kitsune can jump block the Sack Ball, but I think you just kind of accept that. It is interesting. I was talking about how Kayiu's deck isn't that far away from potentially casting in Dire Straits, but it is actually missing double blue, which is a pretty big miss. So we'll see where that goes. But the Sack Ball can now pressure Scribble's... okay, well, so this is one of the best cards in the deck. People will argue it is the best card in the deck, and it is the best Planeswalker in MSEM, some people are claiming. But Vivian, the Sagittar, does just generate kind of an insane amount of card advantage. Kayiu is casting this on turn 3 with a lot of mana to spare, so we're going to go ahead and see the first plus to mill 4 cards. It doesn't get to recur anything, but you did just mill over 2 RFEs, so you can certainly cast... Wait, 2 RFEs? Or was that 3 RFEs? Yeah, just 2 RFEs. Did board in the Relic Corrosion. Corrosion. Interesting. And also makes a Cat Spirit. So, Scribble is in a bad spot. Scribble needs some way to answer this Vivian. And yeah, it doesn't have one, so it's just going to scoop it up. Wow! So, Kayiu made a slight accent there in terms of... revealing hand early, and it just super did not matter. The turn 3 Vivian is just kind of unbeatable. At the very least in a fair matchup where your opponent is trying to grind you out. I'm curious what I guess there's a bunch of enchantments. Most of the win cons are enchantments, so Relic Corrosion makes some amount of sense. Okay, and the artifacts. Okay, I'm behind that. Yeah, I think you just need a lot of hand attack. It's very awkward that Scribble's deck doesn't have answers to Planeswalkers that aren't, just damage-based, and Vivian gets up to a fair bit of loyalty very quickly. So both players are going to keep 7. Kaiyu's hand has. I wonder if Kayiu will lead with the curse or primal. Okay, so Kayiu either pitches one of two 1 mana accelerants. I'm curious which one it'll be. But okay, so pitches the primal resurgence. I assume we'll see forest into curse of encroaching waters. Yep. So Kayiu is now setting up to ramp. But Scribble has the ability to play a turn 2 Ignition Engine, and then afterwards can just start grinding out cards with Lay Bare Ambitions, Chronicles, etc. Looking at the. So, Scribble only knows about the Sackbull, so I don't think we're going to see a Lay Bare Ambitions. Oh my god, played the Crumbling Shrine, and it just drew a Wayfarer Shrine. The Explorer lands are so fucking cracked. But Scribble now has the engine of the deck in play. Doesn't have any ways of gaining life in hand right now, but can still start generating damage off it. Ramsey comes down, sticks a Landora on probably the basic forest. And Kayiu did draw the Vivian for turn, so we can see a Vivian come down next turn, but that means Vivian could get hit by Lay Bare Ambitions if Scribble is willing to chance it. Kayiu does have one unknown. I think it's just the Vivian is the unknown. You do know about the Sackbull, but maybe you think that you can just answer it with Scorch. So we'll see if Scribble makes up the heads-up play and goes for Lay Bare Ambitions. Yep, okay. Goes for it, sees the Vivian, gets to spike that into the bin. Huge win here. And if Scribble wants, we can also see a follow-up Sunlit Highlands into cast either Chronicles or Dark Bargain. I think we'll probably see Chronicles of those two, and get the Ignition proc for 2 more damage. Scribble's deck has done a very good job of kind of putting both players into a relatively low resource game. That's definitely where you want to be in this deck. And then Ignition Engine does a good job of kind of helping you pull ahead on resources or kill your opponent before that matters. Kayiu gets to play a land off of Scribble playing land because of Curse. And I think since Scribble shot that in, I assume we're going to see a spell cast, but I don't know which of the spells it necessarily will be. The other nice thing about starting to run your opponent out of resources is the Valdez kind of looming here, because Valdez is a creature threat in addition to being a good hand attack spell. But also, Scribble is still short a little bit of mana. Okay, yeah, Kayiu caught the life loss. Kayiu getting a little bit flooded, but also it's a 26 land deck, so it's hard to get too salty about flood. Could fire up the Crumbling Shrine, but it's not particularly good into the 2/1 Fox that's sitting here. Sackbull feels pretty good, though. The Wayfarer Shrines and Graveyards means that this thing can grow actually fairly rapidly, so that's exciting. Offering the trade the Antelope for the Fox. I guess Scribble's still like 2 lands off of Chronicles getting Descent, so probably fair. But I know that when I was playing a control deck with Chronicles, I often wanted my Fox to die off to enable Huli. Oh man, Embodied Soul is a great pickup here. Getting to play that, and then you don't want to Scorch Sackbull, because that thing's going to survive. But Embodied Soul is going to get Lifelink, which means it will start cantripping every turn off of the Ignition Engine, which is awesome. Scribble is down to 11 life, though, and this Sackbull is floating functionally 5 power. So Scribble does need to figure out some ways to wrap up this game. I'd be kind of scared to play this Wayfarer Shrine, just because, putting another land in graveyard is a dangerous game here. So, Scribble is down to 9 life. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lands in graveyards. So the Sackbull can swing as a 7/7. So if Kayiu sees this line, I think Scribble is dead, which is insane to say. Because Kayiu just dumps mana into growing the Sackbull at end step, and then on Kaiyu's turn we can see the Crumbling Shrine going up to being a creature, and then swinging. Oh well, no, sorry, I'm an idiot. Scribble has a chump blocker, so that's why Scribble feels so comfortable doing this. And then is going to just hope to outrace the Sackbull, which, I think that's a little bit of a scary bet, but I recognize that that's just the bet that Scribble has to make. I don't know what kill spells Scribble's deck runs. It runs out of body experience and ways of tutoring that up, so that's probably one of the things you're looking for. This late bear ambitions is kind of nice because it means that if you can stabilize on this board state, your opponent doesn't have the like instant get back in the game option of top deck and RFE. It does still have the ability to top deck a Vivian though. Ramsey is not a good draw for Kayiu. It's not the worst draw in the world, but it's certainly not a good one. A question is whether you fire up the Crumbling Shrine or not. I guess there's also a question as to whether you play the second Ramsey just to get an Antelope, but that doesn't seem worth it to me. We're seeing the last land leave the graveyard, so Scribbl is up to a 7/7. Okay, so interesting. We are not seeing a swing with Crumbling Shrine. I wonder if Kayiu is just trying to not overextend into a board wipe. That makes sense to me. This is a spot where like you really would love those Face the Dawns to exist somewhere in your deck. Okay, so plays a second Ramsey, gets a Landora, gets another Antelope. Scribble also can Descent, and then has this perpetual 4/4 flying lifelink jump blocker, which is really good into the Sackball. Yeah, okay. Scribble stabilized here way better than I was giving him credit for. This game is getting really exciting. It also, like, you know, Kayiu does have top decks that just put you in the dirt, which that's one of the risks you play when you're playing mid-range versus these ramp decks is you really need to live your life with the knowledge that at any point in time your opponent could find the right thing and just kill you. But Scribble is doing a really good job of making it hard for Kayiu to find that thing via lay bear ambitions. And yeah, no, I do think Kayiu is taking relatively good and relatively aggressive lines. Okay, we're going to see the Crumbling Shrine activate now. Oh no, it's just exiling the graveyard. Interesting. I guess just keeps growing the Sackball. And I suppose another, like, factor is that Kayiu can also sacrifice the Sackball if it comes to it, which helps in race conditions. Fun fact, in Custom Standard, this thing used to also draw cards when you sacrificed it, but it was only equal to its +1/+1 counters, which is still insane. It was balanced for a format without fetch lands, so when it was added to a format with fetch lands, that obviously required a slight alteration. So if you swing in, if you swing in against Scribble chump blocks, Ignition Engine procs. Oh, you don't want to proc Ignition Engine because it only lets you play the card this turn. But you do go up to 11, then you lose 2 off the Antelopes. So go to 9. Very interesting that we're just not seeing this Crumbling Shrine fired up. I know I just discussed why that probably is, but it still feels odd to me. So Kayiu's empty-handed. You could Valdez just to get the proc. I think I would probably start with Scorch Face, give Embodied Soul Flying, and then I guess you don't need Flying because there's only, well, there's a Ramsey and a Crumbling Shrine on the ground. So you do probably want, and there's an Antelope. Okay, so you definitely are Scorching Face, I assume. Then you can get a proc off of the second spell Ignition Engine via either Valdez or via if your Embodied Soul lifelink trigger, procs Ignition Engine and draws you into another spell. Yeah, I think I've convinced myself Embodied Soul definitely wants to gain flying here. I don't think you care about Vigilance right now, because again, oh wait, no, sorry, you cannot activate Embodied Soul. I totally forgot that aspect of Chronicles of the Kitsune, where you only get it if you have no creatures, which means you cannot activate Embodied Soul on your turn, because it'll stay a creature for too long, and then you will not get a 4/4 flying lifelink blocker. Scorch Face, procs Ignition Engine, so that's 5 damage. So Kayiu goes down to 8. And Embodied Soul is a good blocker, so that's nice. Okay, yeah. So you go to end step, you get your Chronicles token. Kayiu is now in a situation where attacking is no longer favorable, and is just hoping to top deck into some messed up Coalesce card. Or Vivian. Man, it's so good that Scribble tagged that Vivian with the lay bear ambitions. That, we saw how just Scribble did not have outs that game too, but the reason we're still in this game is because that happened. Scribble might be doing math as to whether, it makes sense to animate and attack, and then animate at end step. I agree that it doesn't. Kayiu continuing to Sackbl just to keep Scribble's graveyard clear. This is a good play versus 12,000 eyes, but I don't know if Scribble board that in this matchup, or if you care if you're Kayiu, because that's the graveyard count for 12,000 eyes only really matters if you're paying a bunch of life, or it's, you hit 9 mana, so I think probably fine. But if it's free to do, it's free to do. Are we now going to see? Yeah, we're now going to see a Crumbling Shrine activation. But now it's awkward, because now if you swing in with Crumbling Shrine as well as your other stuff, Huli just chump blocks the Sackball, and, Embodied Soul eats the Shrine, so you don't really have good attacks anymore. Yikes. Drawing another Ramsey, I'm sure, doesn't feel great. Um, we have talked about how Scribble really needs to get lucky several turns in a row, or Kayiu needs to get unlucky several turns in a row. But I am slightly, I think we're slightly overstating how many cards in Kaiyu's deck are good draws right now. It's like we have Vivian, or that's Scribble's deck again. Vivian's a great draw. Leyran Alpha's a great draw. Pell Scatter's an okay draw. So that's around 12 draws. I guess that's quite a few draws in the past, like, 3 or 4 cards that we've seen miss. So Kayiu is getting a little bit lucky. Kaiyu's getting a little bit unlucky. Some amount of salt is fair. The thing that I was going to remark is that Late Bear Ambitions reduces the number of good top decks, since you need to cast two draw spells into it before you actually have, or the first draw spell you cast into it is not a particularly good top deck, and you need to cast it a second time from your graveyard before it is. What would that Antelope attack tell me if I'm Scribble? I have no idea. I think I just say, you don't have anything, I block. Huli dies again. Scribble goes up to 16 life, so now can just tank a hit from Sackball. I think Scribble has turned the corner. Kayiu can get hit next turn for 4 damage in the air. If Ignition Engine hits a burn spell, this game is over. Wow. Scribble actually did not intend on playing this deck at the GP, and partially cited the fact that it had some really rough matchups versus linear decks. So this is a really impressive win. So doesn't draw a land yet. Oh, but okay. So still has, if you swing in with the Embodied Soul, you get your Ignition Engine proc to draw a card. I think so. Okay, if your opponent has Leyran Alpha, worst case scenario happens on the top deck. You take 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, plus another 4, so you take 17 damage. So you actually live that if you Embodied Soul swing. Interesting. Valdez feels like a more play. Oh, I guess you get to kind of have your... Well, wait, why would you do it before combat? Because you don't know what you're Ignition Engineing into. Yeah, I mean, I think that's technically a little bit of sloppy play by Scribble, but I also don't think it matters. Yeah, that's fair. Which Valdez is, marking Valdez to have the correct stats. So yeah, in Dire Straits is not quite where you need to be. Kayiu does have the Sackball to gain a bunch of life, so, isn't dead yet. But the first cast of this in Dire Straits is not particularly good, and unfortunately Kayiu doesn't have a second blue source, which is really awkward. If Kayiu did have a second blue source, we could see 1, 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 mana plus another 2-drop. That puts you 1 away from being able to reconstruct in Dire Straits. And in Dire Straits is only, quote-unquote, only 5 attackers. So Scribble still has the ability to slowly eat away at those with blocks. But the fact that Kayiu is now in a spot... So you definitely attack if you're Kayiu with Sackball. Well, okay. I don't know, actually. Do you scoop if you're Kayiu? Because you definitely intend on attacking with Sackball because you need to sacrifice it. So you don't have any real choice there. But Scribble can now just take that because, is back up to 20 life. So going down to 12 is just not a big deal. It's irrelevant. Alright, well, what does Scribble hit off the draw? Prying Inquiry. Can Prying Inquiry plus Valdez to throw a lethal amount of damage, which Kayiu would just dodge. I think you definitely activate Embodied Soul and swing with Embodied Soul before you do anything else. I'd probably also attack with Valdez. Just right now Valdez represents, I guess Valdez can block... Well, the Sackball is dying no matter what, so you no longer are worried about the Sackball. So Valdez can block 2 damage, so Valdez only represents 2 life on the backswing, and if it attacks, your opponent probably has to just block it, because otherwise they are in a really bad spot. So, yeah, man. Cashing in Scribbl, going up to 10 life. Yeah, is going to eat the lay bear ambitions first. Oh, yeah, exactly what I was describing. Yep. All right, goes up to 10, presumably chump blocks, goes down to 6, has 2 more turns of being alive. Um, so I don't love this triple block just because, well, I mean, okay, no, your opponent doesn't get Huli because they still have a creature in play. So trading Valdez for those tokens is fine. Although there are backup Valdez's just like in play. Shenjin's command is playable off Ignition Engine. Hitting the yard is kind of nice because that in dire straits is possibly a way back into this game for Kayiu. I'd be kind of tempted to do that. I don't know the other things that Kayiu has in his deck, or sorry, that Scribbl has in his deck to want to tutor up. But like, you could tutor up the Ancient Council to have a source of life gain for Ignition Engine procs. Shenjin's command also on its own automatically procs Ignition Engine for another 2 damage. Oh, you can find a Scorch, so Kayiu would go down to 1 life. Yikes. Yeah, I mean, Scribbl has enough life to work, or you could actually gain life is also fine. But Scribbl has enough life to work with that there's not really a risk at this point of Kayiu like top decking a Leyra in Alpha and killing you. I definitely keep wanting to like not count this game as over or count Kayiu out because I don't know how the ramp deck plays in spots like this particularly well. And for all I know, to experienced ramp players, actually you just simply draw these 3 cards in succession and then you win. That feels unlikely to me. Okay, is going for the card draw. Always go for the card draw. That's just so funny to me. Scribbl is very much a control player who is here to get more advantage accrued over you over a period of time. It is not aggro-brained in a way that would cause him to just go for the kill. Vivian, nice now. You really wanted her to show up earlier. The fact that there's a flying lifelinker means, or flying first striker means that, or just flyer in general, I guess, means that Vivian making tokens doesn't matter. You need some answer to the embodied soul. Yeah, if this Vivian had come like 1 or 2 turns earlier, maybe we had something. Or that relic corrosion. I was questioning the relic corrosion earlier, and that was just super wrong. Relic corrosion is so good for you. So that's blue, plus 2 more mana, plus another 2 mana, plus a final 2 mana, so that would be 7. So can RFE, but the Aeons are particularly forgotten right here. Draws some stuff. Those are generic cards. I guess needed to draw Relic Corrosion. That's what Kayiu was looking to draw. My bad. Because still has this Crumbling Shrine. So hitting a Relic Corrosion would have meant that Kayiu would have like been able to answer the Embodied Soul. You're still in a really bad spot, but you're not literally dead on board. And that's often what matters. Vivian does have the ability to do another activation, but none of these activations particularly matter right now. The -2 doesn't answer the Embodied Soul unless it's animated. The +1 gains 2 life. And Kayiu calls it here. Or sorry, only gains 2 life if it can block. Really close and exciting set. Very much wish both these players good luck in the rounds to follow. And I hope everyone who tuned in had a nice time. This is That Damn Pipsqueak signing off.